Hey guys, my name is Charles Kulona. I'm a postgraduate law student at Wits University, and in this video, we're gonna speak about my experience on meeting Vusi Thembekwayo and his book, The Magna Carta. So, first things first, when I met Vusi Thembekwayo, wow. One of the first things you realize is that he has presence, right? So you're like, okay, I wonder what he'll say, because it's Vusi Thembekwayo. He always has interesting things to say. So I was anticipating a lot, and I was like, I wonder what he'll say. And then he got on stage, said some interesting facts. And to speak about him as a person, I would say he's a very manly person, number one. So one of the things you realize is that he's fatherly, because when you get to meet him, there's this fatherly energy around, and it's quite masculine, and he's big. I didn't know he's that big, So yeah, it was quite interesting and fascinating. He's my role model. I look up to him, and so seeing him face to face was such an experience. And he gave me this book, the Magna Carta, and as you can see, this book was signed, and it stipulates, "Dear Itu, keep chasing your dream, Vusi Thembekwayo." So I'm gonna speak about this book, give a little synopsis about the book to say, what does it entail. Obviously, I won't speak a lot, so that you guys, I'll leave curiosity for you to read the book on your own, right? So first things first, the Magna Carta, right? A lot of people are like, what is the Magna Carta? I won't delve deeper into it because I want to reserve room for curiosity. But essentially, the Magna Carta is the Great Charter, right? So it's a book about the Great Charter. So the Great Charter that stipulates Mr. Thembekwayo's principles and views and propositions to say, how does he want the world to be like? And in this book, as it states, the Magna Carta of Exponentiality, he delves deeper into speaking about how a person can reap exponential results in linear markets. So essentially, when you have a business or you're an aspiring business person, an aspiring entrepreneur, an aspiring leader, so in this book, he speaks about how you can harness the power within you and the principles, that have worked, that have proven to work, and how you can apply those principles to produce exponential results. So the Magna Carta of Exponentiality. So the book provides propositions to say, how can you produce exponential results in linear markets? So where others might find it difficult to produce great results, in this book, Vusi Thembekwayo stipulates how you can reap the best of rewards possible out of your entrepreneurial, out of your leadership, out of energy. So, in this book, Vusi Thembekwayo, so one of the things I've realized is that it's easy to mistake Vusi Thembekwayo for just a speaker, And he's not just a speaker, Oftentimes his fluency and his common sense and his, unique sense, because he speaks quite interesting things. One of the things is that you'll mistake him for just a speaker, and you might forget that he's an entrepreneur. In this book, he shows you that he's really, really, really an entrepreneur. The research that he does in this book. So in this book, he provides, this dichotomy between ShopRite and Pick and Pay, on how ShopRite is able to create so much profit, as opposed to Pick and Pay. Whereas when they initially started, Pick and Pay was valued at over 1 billion rands, I think, rands, not dollars, yeah, more than ShopRite, right? So Pick and Pay was valued more as opposed to ShopRite, but fast forward later, ShopRite is almost double in terms of market value as opposed to Pick and Pay. So in this book, he does market research, and he provides principles of how, business people can produce the results that ShopRite did, in terms of their competition with Pick and Pay, right? So one of the things that stood out for me in this book is what he says, So there's a chapter where he speaks about organizational context, So the chapter is quite interesting because what he says stands out for me. So he says your Shell garage, your BP, all these garages, as we call them in South Africa, essentially they're not in the business of providing petrol, right? They're in the business of making sure that cars move. So he stipulates that if you think your garages, your petrol stations, they're in the business of providing petrol, then you couldn't be more illusion, right? So he states that if your petrol stations, funny how they're called petrol stations. If your petrol stations, your BP, Shell and stuff, if they're in the business of selling petrol, then what would happen if tomorrow all vehicles are electric? Then it essentially means businesses, your petrol stations would have to move from petrol to electric, right? So essentially they're in the business of making sure that there's mobility in terms of transportation, that cars move, right? So they are not in the business of selling petrol per se. So he states that organizational context, businesses need to understand why they exist, under what circumstances they exist. So every business here encourages business owners to question themselves, to say, why do you exist in the first place? What service are you providing? What products are you selling? And then he says, crucify the core. So essentially, do not focus on the products or services you're providing. So essentially, BP, garage and stuff, the garages, they shouldn't focus on, the things they provide, the petrol. We couldn't care less whether they sell the best petrol in the world. We just need cars to move around. That's their niche, that's their target market, that's why they exist. So in this book, he states that, he goes deeper than that. And I highly encourage this book, the Magna Carta, arguably one of the best books I've ever read. And, when you listen to Vusi Thembekwayo, the way he writes in this book, it's sort of the same, he's speaking the same tone, and it's almost as though you are listening to him, when reading this book. So it's very interesting, and I highly recommend the Magna Carta, and I hope to meet Vusi Thembekwayo once again, and he's such a phenomenal person. And yeah, thank you guys, that was the video. Please subscribe, like the video, and see you on the next one. Thank you.